Hi, I've got a bit of a more general question for Jethro about translation. So I was a language student and I always really liked doing translation, but I feel like with AI now, I've had so many people telling me, oh, that's not going to be a job anymore. Like AI is going to be able to translate everything. And I was just wondering what your opinion on that is, especially with books like this one which requires such like a deep knowledge of the context and there's so many different layers. I was just wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have asked me this question a few years ago, I'd have been with you. There's no way AI could ever, but it's getting very good, isn't it? It couldn't pick up on some of the nuances we've been talking about. Obviously, a machine learning tool could not um, interact with Joaquim and decide which bits to uh, expand on and which bits to reduce and so on. This is part of what you do as a translator. Um, Nor could it perhaps quite pick up on, yeah, the changes in register, which is a fundamental part of the book. But it is, let's be honest, it is getting pretty good at the basics. So as a translator, I am a bit worried about my ability to make a living, let's say, not because a book like this, yeah, probably a publisher will recognize you need a translator for, but I don't really make a living from doing these books. You make a living from doing a lot of sample translations. So you do a couple of the first two chapters, let's say, of an author's work, and they are sent to publishers in the UK, in the US, but also in Germany and Japan and other countries because they can all read the English sample. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that line of work dries up because it's a sample and probably a publisher will think, right, I know it's done by a machine, gives me an idea. Do I like it or not? And if we were to pursue it, we'll get a human to do the proper version, or we'll get a machine to do it, and the translator will edit it. I can imagine these things happening. So I don't think it's a good thing, but of course, the counter argument might be that more books will become translated or more books available because it wasn't easy to get this book published in English. I sent it to quite a few publishers in the UK, and eventually it found its way to a publisher in California. But a lot of publishers didn't know what to do with it because it doesn't fit in that box of, what is it? We've just been discussing. It's a hybrid. The beauty of it is it's not quite like other things. So, publishers are a bit scared, and even, fair play to Unnamed Press that they did publish it, but me and Joachim have found they didn't quite know what to do with it once they had. They found it hard to market it, found it hard to, books from booksellers to reviewers to everyone likes to pigeonhole a book. Is it travel writing? Is it memoir? Is it history, etc.? And this is all of them, and therefore sometimes falls in the gaps a bit. So yeah, I think it's on the one hand, this book is a good example of why you need a person. I'll give you a better example, even because one of the hardest things to translate in this, let's bear in mind, one of the main subjects is race, history of racism, slavery. And so you've got, as was highlighted early on, uh, essentially in Portuguese, there's two words you could have negro or preto, and they are the terms that are used to various degrees to cover what in English we have a much wider array of words, and the context of them changes all the time. The context changes between UK English and American English. and you really need to make sure you're picking the right word. Me and Joaquim discussed quite a lot how to translate preto, and in some instances he said, no, this has got to be the hardest word, so the N word, and in other instances maybe not. There's an old guy talking, and he was using old-fashioned language rather than deliberately seeking to offend. So, we were able to draw or make a distinction, let's say, in the English one. Now, if you've run that through a machine translator, I'm not confident it would be very sensitive in its words choices in that sense. So yeah, those are the pros and cons of the argument.
Eu posso fazer posso juntar uma coisa.
I would like to add something to that, to what Jethro already said. So we also had to adapt many parts of the book, namely the rice fields where the family that came from Africa was placed. So Jethro and I compared them with the rice fields in Louisiana. So I don't think that AI would have been able to get to that. That's definitely an example of a direct intervention of a translator who is able to understand the meaning of the text, the idea behind it, and able to convey it in another language in a way that the reader is going to be able to understand what the context is. So I really do not believe that artificial intelligence would have been able to do that.